Welcome to our special podcast series for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, running from November 25th to December 10th, with your host, Charmin Prince. And together, we'll shine a light on some of the urgent issues of gender-based violence. In this series, we'll delve into personal stories, legal insights, and share vital resources that empower individuals and communities to take action. Our goal is to raise awareness, ignite conversations, and advocate for change in our societies. Join us as we embark on this critical journey to stand against violence, uplift survivors, and promote a world free from fear and abuse. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. This is the Anything Gender podcast, and I'm Charmin Prince. And today we have a guest for the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series, who is a family man, an international dad, a passionate mentor, and a fervent life coach who believes in social institutional transformations through relations and interactions. Chris is a senior consultant in risk security and safety, health, and environment management. He has mentored and life coached over 1,500 men, boys, young men, dads, and women who are single parents. He has developed many programs, including the Man Effort, the Boys Bridge, the All Daddy, and Mothers of the Best Man programs. Join me in welcoming Chris to the Anything Gender podcast. Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much, Charmin. Thank you so much, and thank you for the introduction. I'm honored to.
You're welcome. Is there anything that I missed in your bio that you want to add?
Maybe you just want to say he's a man who loves God's design of the world.
Thank you so much, Chris. Now, Chris, while reading your bio and reviewing your guest form, I had some personal questions I wanted to ask about all that you do.
Yes,
And thank you for all that you do and for serving so many people that are in need. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
How do you define the social construction of gender? And how does that social construction influence gender?
Well, thanks, Charmin. Thank you very much for that question. When we talk about my definition of social construction or gender construction, I am thinking generally is what are the functions of a man in the society, right from birth through the developmental stages to when he becomes an elder. The same thing applies to a woman. What are their roles in society in terms of from the date of birth through the developmental stages to when they become mothers, and when up to the time that God says, come and join me in my kingdom. And so that to me is the definition. What are women supposed to do in all the stages? What are men supposed to do in all the stages? And how do we support each other in these developmental stages? Or where do we separate? And is this separation something that should bring us apart, tear us apart, or should bring us together? That for me, Shamin, is social construction or gender construction.
Thank you for that. And as you're speaking and you're talking about the developmental stages, you took me way back to the classroom. When you talk about developmental stages, are you talking about the Erikson psychosocial developmental stage, or are you talking about our social developmental stages? Can you explain that a little for me?
Thank you. When I talk about the social developmental stages, I look at that from mentorship and life coaching principles or applications, and what do we need to catch, teach, and ensure that we coach into our children and our adults when they grow up. For example, there is this time that they are toddlers, babies. It's an opening to mentorship. It is an opening to life coaching. From there, they become, toddlers and babies, and they go into boys, they go into girls, they go into preteens, they go into teen, they go into young adults, they go into men, women, and then they go into adults and elders. That for me is what I mean by the developmental stages. When I look at that from a mentorship, and a life coaching perspective. Yes, that's what I mean.
Okay. Because when I heard that, I immediately thought about Erikson and Freud, psychosocial developmental stages. And it sounds like what you're referencing. Thank you for that. Share with us a memory of working with some of the men that you've mentored, and what are some lasting impact that group left with you?
I have many of such illustrations, but I'll choose an interaction I had with the young guys, and a question was posed: what is the funniest moment you've had with your dad? And one of the young boys came out and said, my dad has provided for us what a father or a dad should provide. He's enabled internet in our house. We have DSTV, multi-choice in our house. And we have all these entertainment programs and setups and infrastructures in our house. And so one day we make this mistake, and dad says, I'm going to deny the services of multi-choice or DSTV, cable TV. And what does he do? He takes away the decoder with himself. And he left behind the Wi-Fi or internet connectivity. And the boys were able to still access the internet, which in the first place, the dad was trying to deny them as a punitive method. So that left a lasting impression in me. It's a simple incident, but a lasting impression in me. And this told me and that there are a lot of generational differences. There are a lot of generational changes. And life has affected us in very many ways. What else ourselves in our age, I am 58 years, what else in this age, we are manually set up. We are from that age, a lot of things were manually done. Our children right now are in the age of Industry 4.0 technologies. And they are more technology oriented, more thoughtful in terms of technology, and they solve their problem from a technology perspective. So that communicated to me the generational difference. And I needed to find a way to bridge this gap between these two generations and have them communicate, because the baseline of our engagement at that particular time was father-son relationship. You ask a daddy, do you know your son's friends? And he's scratching his head. Do I really know them? When you ask the son, do you know your dad's friends? And he can mention 2 or 3. So when you try to find what is this gap in between, and you find one of the things is communication in the house. And the communication here is different. How we view communication in our age, how they view communication in their age. And that alone taught me a lot of things. So that made me adjust my coachings, my mentorship, to suit these generations. When I go to much older people, because of what lesson I learned from that and many others, I am more practical, hands-on in doing what I want to pass to them. If, for example, a car is broken down, you have to physically do it yourself, and they see the procedure, and somewhat repeatedly they get attached knowledge to that. But for the young persons, if I want to teach them, most effective way would be, for example, go on YouTube or get a movie that shows how to do this, and it is more impactful in them when they look at it from a technology perspective than when you look from our perspective of physical intervention. So these are kind of lessons that really touch me and push me time and again to change how I approach my lessons, my interactions across these generational gaps.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's brilliant, because I know in life coaching, in the clinical world, you meet our clients where they are, so, and as you're talking about the two generations, studies were done, and now they are creating these kind of homes in the US where they have those two generations living. People that are retired and maybe college students, because they found that intergenerational relationship is beneficial to both parties, and they have found so many benefits. I think that's a way forward for any group setting that has those two generations, because the empirical data is there to support that it works. So thank you for that. I want to switch gears a little and ask you to tell me, from your professional perspective, the roles that men can play in breaking the harmful social constructs of the things that contribute to gender-based violence.
Jamin, thank you very much for that question. And I want to approach it from several dimensions. One, I am a risk profession and I'm a security profession. I've done investigations. I've looked at risks that women are exposed to in terms of armed conflict and unarmed conflicts. I've investigated cases in my country of violence against women. And what I can tell you, passionately, what I can tell you from deep down my heart is that men and boys face countless choices that can either reduce or increase the prevalence of violence against women and girls in our society. All right. Some of our men can watch their fellow men violently engage a woman in very many ways, or a girl, and they will do nothing. They'll actually sit there and really, like, they are happy to see what's going on, right? But then what we have done is we have looked at what are these efforts we can have towards men to ensure that as they grow up, they appreciate the kingdom design, that man was created to protect a woman. A woman was created as a companion for a man. And when both of them work together positively and discuss their negative differences in that slowest pace possible, something can happen. In that investigation, you also find, we look at what are these impactful ways of preventing violence against women from men. So we look at a number of areas. One, we look at the individual. Where has this individual come from? What has his been background and breeding? Is he from a seriously patriarchal setup, family setup? Is he from a background where the father believed that for a woman to do what you want her to do, you have to exert some excessive force, either physically or verbally? Is that the kind of a family setup he's from? Men are more wired towards a norm, something that they do repeatedly, something they see repeatedly. If they see this repeatedly, they are more bound to relate to that, and they're more bound to adapt that. Then from there, we look at the interpersonal. What can we do so that we use the interpersonal, we create or build or grow the ability of men to have this interpersonal closeness, and that they are able to tell their friends when they do something that is violent towards women and girls, that this is wrong. And they see the fact of the perspective of the reasoning what this person is bringing up to support the fact that what you're doing is wrong. Then we also look at community. Over time, what has been the inclination or the skewness of this community towards man-woman relationship is a stereotype so ingrained or enrooted in society that projects a man as the person who owns a woman, or is it a different thing? And then when you look at the society defaults, what do organizations that we work in, the social structures in our society, like for example the church, a men congregation, or for example, a men coming together from he for she, or women coming together from she for he, where men and women relate. When we look at the negatives in these areas and examine them so closely, then you find that some of these violences are inbuilt in those categories that I've mentioned. So for us to address them, we must have the right intervention, for example, to address the individual. Mentorship is one very good intervention to change an individual's mindset and tell him that if you came from a family that was naturally violent to women, that is a past that you must reconcile with, accept, let it go, and bring God into it for forgiveness and move on to an area where you accept women. When it goes to the interpersonal, we train people to see that I can be a brother's keeper. When you bring a religious perspective of it, Christ Jesus had 12 disciples. We encourage men to work with accountability partners, a fellow brother, a fellow man who can tell you so candidly, so strongly, that what you're doing is wrong, and you're bound to listen to them and take the next course. In communities, we have intervention in the communities where we try to mend fences, we try to change the society, we try to bring in social defenses that make sure that our communities are constructed from perspective of respecting women and man relationship. So it is a long train of a lot of things that we are doing to ensure that we are eliminating this or bringing it to as low as reasonably possible with an end objective of eliminating it.
Thank you. So many important points and highlighted nuances. I love how you talk about the importance of socialization. And it is a part of our developmental stage that is important, because you mentioned if boys were socializing in an environment where they experience vicarious traumas, it's likely they will become perpetrators. You talk about the socialization where we see nurture versus nature. Those are important areas that I have seen, especially for our little Black brothers and sisters around the world. How are you and the community that you serve working with boys or parents to help reshape their socialization, if you are?
Thank you very much. And allow me to start from a reverse engineering direction. And reverse engineering here, I start from the parents and go to the children. Now, one of our very formidable intervention in reversing the negative socialization is we have worked on finding avenues where older men like myself can become vulnerable and speak to the younger generation about the afflictions that they face in their life that affect them in many ways. We have definitive characteristics that we look at in men that tells me or tells my team that this man requires intervention. One of that intervention is reconciliation with the past. For example, you see men adapting coping mechanisms. He's verbally aggressive over tiny things that don't even make sense. It's like killing a mosquito with a hammer. When a child makes a mistake, the amount of words, the verbal aggression towards that child is so immense that men who are conscious of what is going on, like myself, we end up getting lost in the forest, being completely lost. We cannot align our ducks because we are wondering what's going on here. They are verbally aggressive. Some of our men are also completely, it's inside them. They are timid. They don't want to speak about it. They are quiet, coping mechanism. So when you observe this kind of characteristics in men, what then do we do? We have an intervention program, Man Effort, that basically sits our men down and tells our men that every man in this world has a wound. And this wound has a source. You want to overcome the person you are, then we must work together to identify this wound and reconcile that wound, yourself, myself, and the past that has wounded you. One of the biggest wounds is from the fathers. I like calling them dads, and when they make mistakes, I call them fathers. Any man in this world can be a father. Very few of us can be dads. The dad is the one who's responsible. Fathers, any man can be a father. So we look at what happened when they were young. If my father was violent, or he did something that really hurt me, hurt the bottom of me, I will carry that with me as a wound. And when I grow up and become a male adult, I would exercise, or that wound would manifest in me in a different way. And one of the manifestations is violence towards women. Maybe when I was growing up, my father was absent. A man requires an authority to show them direction. If you rear dogs like myself, Shamin, you will see the existence of masculinity in dogs. Yeah. When the puppies are hungry, they make a lot of noise when they're around the mother. When their dad is there, even how much no matter how much hungry they are, they're very quiet. Why? Because of the respect of that authority. So human beings who grow either under fathers, absent fathers, or fatherlessness, they have these coping mechanisms that they have in them. So we bring that out, looking at how their father behaved with them and making them vulnerable, talk about their fathers, talk about their mothers, talk about their friends, talk about their community, talk about self-inflicted failures or losses or even disability. Because men were created by God to be warriors, protect, have dominion, lead. But when that leadership or when that warrior is taken off them, that is the time they become wounded. So we try as much, our intervention is to open these men to as many other illustrations of men like myself on what is denying them the ability to come out so strong and become men. And if they go on that direction of deniability, then they are bound to manifest that in the form of violence. And they will not see that violence as a mistake. They can only see that as a mistake or as a problem when they reconcile with their past. We use also their women to bring this up. Women talk. They're lovely creatures. They're the flowers of the world. They speak to us about their men and their inadequacies, and we pick that up from them. And we go out and have discussion with those men and change them from what they are, which is reflected on the long time ago, to the present man. And we've had transformation stories where men have changed, that they've become the men that are so loving, men that are leaders, men that are warriors, men that love faithfully, men that take initiative, and men that leave a worthy legacy when it's their time to depart from this world.
Thank you so much. How can anyone listening help the boys in their care become role models. Notice I had to change my vocabulary because I didn't want to say the negative part. Become role models and men allies who support women and fight against gender-based violence.
Nice question. I was waiting for that question. Really. We'd all have been sure if we had not that question. Thank you, Sham. The first thing that we must do is from upbringing. And this means we must look at creating safe spaces for children from home to school. They must have a safe space where they can express themselves. And in that expression, we can help them reconcile with whatever problem that they are facing. Both men and the women, right? Despite the fact that women are naturally endowed with that outside relationship with their children. But we must get involved in childcare by creating very close connections with our children. My daughter and my son love it when I tell them the stories of how me and their mother met. Lovely story for them. My daughter will ask that question 1,000 times, right? The next thing that we must do, the boys, we must raise them to ensure that they break free from harmful stereotypes. We keep telling boys, men don't cry, but they have tear glands. God's construction is you have to. So when they can be able to be vulnerable and express themselves, then we can understand them. And from that vulnerability, create a strength in them that makes them different from any other. Then we must commit ourselves, and I find boys loving this, to commit to inclusive storytelling and avoid common harmful gender stereotypes. When I speak to my boys in my mentorship, I speak them about inclusivity. I talk about inclusivity. And I've harnessed that in my son. My son has a very close relationship with the mother. I don't take that personally. I love it. Why? Because I still get to hear what he wants from the mother. And I solve it. Your mother told me, thank you for speaking to your mom. It's okay, you can speak to your mom, but find courage to also speak to me. I'll show you the manual of doing that. So it becomes another important thing when we tie together stereotype out of our thoughts, right? The next important thing is comprehensive sexuality education. Sometimes they lose their sexual identity. And this is harmful when they are all grown up. So the issue, sexuality, we must candidly speak to them. We must openly speak to them. But we are saying that we must use language appropriate, age appropriate language for interventions. We do not want to use the absolute or the absolute words to young boys. They would go to school and use those words and they'll be rejected by everybody. That rejection alone is a recipe of a bad future. So we must use language appropriate, but to educate them. When they ask a question based on sexuality, it's an opportunity for you as a parent to speak candidly, age appropriate, and ensure that every time they think about sexual discussions, they reflect, what did daddy tell me? What did mom tell me? And when we speak to them, we must be very authentic. We don't tell them the wrong thing. My mother told me children are bought from the supermarket. I know she lied. Now I know she lied. But why she said that? I don't tell my children the same thing. I tell them something different, right? When there are campaigns out there, we can create campaigns ourselves or join campaigns like what Charmaine is doing. 16 days of activism. Let us, as men, volunteer ourselves to have other men listen to our voices, hear our voice about our concerns. How we can work together to support this noble cause. That we create an environment, we create a world where women are respected, no violence against them, but they are considered as companions. And God was very strong and told Adam, I'm going to create for you a companion. When you look at what a companion is a helper, is an Ezer, somebody who makes you better, somebody who gives you another direction that you can use or you can take to better what you already have. Strengthen our women, remove economic barriers that take our women downside of the valley. And women are very good in collective approach. In their collective approach, when they are empowered, I believe this world can be so different. Charmaine, lastly, we remove all the barriers that stop our women from advancing. Create national policy frameworks that allows women to take part in decision making, in frameworks on matters that empower the girl child and empower the woman and allow them space in leadership. Allow them to discuss issues that affect them from their own perspective. It's not right for a man to go and discuss women things. Whereas I don't know, I'm not the shoe wearer. No. Let us give women that space, but they tell us things about themselves that we would not know unless they themselves spoke to us about it.
Wow, what a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much. And if our listeners would like to contact you or look you up, where can they do that?
I am available on YouTube. I'm available on Facebook. I'm available on WhatsApp. I've got a phone. I've got a mail, and all that. Was shared or can be shared with you for you to share for our viewers to contact me when they would like to contact me. And I'll be so glad to share my knowledge.
Perfect.
I would like to go back to my creator empty, having shared all the knowledge that I have with everybody in this who wants to listen.
Thank you so much, Sean. All of the information for Chris, it's going to be in the show notes. And we thank you for your time and hope that you join us for the next episodes of the 16 Days of Activism podcast series.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. We hope today's discussions inspired you to take action and support those affected by gender-based violence. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave us a review. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence podcast series. We hope today's discussions inspired you to take action and support those affected by gender-based violence. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave us a review. Your voice is crucial in spreading awareness and advocating for change. Stay connected with us on social media at Eagles Empower to Soar, EETS, and visit our website at www.eaglesoar.org. For more resources and information, let's continue this important conversation and work together to create a safer world for all. Until next time, take care and stand strong against violence.